Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Emhauser. You can find me on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, pretty much everywhere at Hawk Blogger. And today it's not a morning, it's an afternoon because there are few people that are special enough guests to make sure we move to their availability. And Derrik Klassen of the Athletic Football Show is absolutely one of them. Derrik, you came on with us before the season. We talked a little Hawks. It was great, and great to have you back. How's life?
I'm glad to be back. I mean, life is crazy. It's, you get used to most of the ebbs and flows of the football season, but this year with the Athletic Football Show, we've got a studio in Chicago now, but I'm based in California, so we've been doing a little bit of back and forth there. So a little bit crazy, but this is the point of the season where I feel like things start to actually coalesce and you feel like you can talk about things in a meaningful manner. So I'm pretty excited.
Well, I mean, it seems like Robert's getting a little preferential treatment. Like if the studio's in Chicago, I mean, you're in the West Coast. Like the West Coast is where all the media should be existing. I don't know, man. Maybe that studio should be out your way.
You would think, but I'll give him credit. Chicago's a little bit of a cooler city than Fresno, California. So I mean, maybe that's the decider there.
Well, amazing stuff at the Athletic Football Show. Definitely one of the podcasts I listen to each and every week. And I was really eager to have you on because one, I always respected your analysis of all things going on with football. But two, when we talked the first time, you were among the folks that were skeptical about what was going on with the Seahawks. And you and I had, I think, a really fun back and forth about how that would work out. And I've been wrong about quite a few things regarding this team and around other things, especially I'll say I've been wrong about Matt Stafford looking like I thought he was going to look like the guy he was last year. He looks a lot better. But after the Arizona game, you made some comments about your perspective on the Seahawks offense. And for folks that didn't hear, like what's your perspective then and what is it now?
I mean, but coming into the season, I was not very enthusiastic about this. And I think part of it was I thought Sam Darnold last year was not as good as what I believe Geno Smith had been in Seattle. And obviously, Geno Smith has just not played very well this season. But just based on what he had been in Seattle, I didn't think Sam was that caliber of quarterback. And then there was just a lot of I don't know with the rest of the pieces on the offense. Like Klint Kubiak, his stint calling plays in Minnesota was not very good. And then last year with the Saints, it was like you had the most insane 2 weeks ever and then nothing after that because they had a bunch of guys hurt. And so I think you had that. Interior offensive line, I just didn't know. Like I know Gray Zabel was a first-round pick, but it was like sometimes those guys just don't work out and don't especially work out right away. So I just didn't know there. And then the skill players outside of JSN, it was like I like me AJ Barner. How good of a tight end one is AJ Barner really? And then it's like Cooper Kupp at this stage in his career. What's he going to be? Torrey Horton, 5th-round pick coming off of injury. I was just like, I don't know what the ceiling for the offense was supposed to be and how it's all supposed to come together. But the coaching has been as well as it looked in those first 2 weeks for the Saints last year. I think it's been really, really well put together. And that was why I said what I said after the Cardinals game. Whereas I think the first couple weeks of the season, it was like sometimes you just can't get a hold on stuff. But watching that Cardinals game, it felt like the first time all year where I was comfortable with what the game plan looked like in terms of they did really well attacking Arizona outside in the run game, which is where you have to beat that team. I thought they did well there. Their play action game looked good. The way that they schemed stuff up over the middle, even with their drop back game, I thought looked really good in that game. Sam Darnold's accuracy has been insane all year, but in that game in particular, looked really good. And then you felt the talent of the offense, I think, come through in that game. Like, obviously, Arroyo makes a big catch down the field. Kenneth Walker making a couple of plays the way that he did. You see Sam's arm talent, JSN down the field. Just like, I was like, that was the first game where I was like, okay, the vision for what it was supposed to be in August, I get it now. Like, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I'll be frank. I've been frank with my audience about this. I've said multiple times during the offseason, I think Geno Smith is a better quarterback than Sam Darnold. Like that was my impression coming in. And I'm not sure that we've got proof that that's not the case, but you cannot argue. I could definitely not argue that Sam Darnold has been a much better quarterback this year than Geno Smith has been. And so, as you kind of described what's been going on and you talk about the Klint Kubiak experience in New Orleans and Minnesota, in particular, I'm interested in digging in with you there. What are you seeing that is allowing? I mean, there's some insane numbers going on there, Derrik. Like they're averaging almost 15 yards per pass attempt on play action. Next closest team is like Tampa Bay at 10, which is also insane, but it's 5 yards less. Like how, like they're not passing often, but when they are, it's been pretty explosive.
Well, I think that's part of it. And I'll actually start my point with a question for you. What did you think the offensive identity was even supposed to be last year under Ryan Grubb?
Last year?
Yes. Like, did you even feel like they had one?
They did not. In fact, Derek, I asked that question of Ryan Grubb multiple times for the season. Like, what's your identity? And do you need to actually commit to something and repeat it, or do you need to kind of find what works and then build around it? And he all the time, his question was like, we're searching for it. That was his question, his answer last year, because they didn't have an identity last year.
And that's exactly the difference to me this year is like Klint, Kubiak. They've done a really good. I think we knew they were going to be like a heavy outside zone type of team, and they've done that. And the results I think have been up and down, but much better run game than last year. But they've been a really heavy team, and they've done well to stay under center and stay in a lot of the passing scenarios that they want to, and like kind of stay ahead of the sticks, which I think has really helped their quarterback. And so they've been a really heavy team. Like they're running 12 and 13 a lot more than just about every other team in the NFL. And that I think has allowed them to get teams into base defense. You know, we were doing our preview show earlier today. I think Robert had a stat that teams have played base defense against the Seahawks on 51% of their snaps, which in this day and age is kind of crazy that they've gotten teams to do that as often as they have. And so obviously you've got more backers on the field. It's easier to abuse those guys over the middle, and JSN's good over the middle. Barner has been good. Cooper Kupp, that's obviously where he can live. And so I think they've just done a really good job of honing in on that being the identity. And I think kind of to that point, that has really helped Sam Darnold stay out of a lot of tough and obvious we have to pass scenarios, whether that means on the scoreboard, like they're just not down very often, so he doesn't have to feel like they're chasing. I think that's helped. They're also just not, they get into when they're in third down, it's a lot of third and shorts, which allows them to be an empty in a way that on 3rd and 9 is kind of difficult to do. And so I just think that they've done a really good job, even if the run game isn't great. They've kind of leveraged that into still being a heavy team that uses play action the way that they do. And then a lot of their third down stuff with some of the empty answers. Like they have an identity. And then in a couple of these specific scenarios, they found good answers when they needed to.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you and Robert are all over it with the stacked boxes. And with them going, and they originally were a lot of 21 when Robbie Utes was healthy. And they'll get back to some of that when he's back after the bye week. But they've gone to 12, and they're the number 1 12 personnel offense in the NFL. They're good actually running and passing out of 12 personnel, and that's kind of become their staple. And to your point, that's getting a lot of stacked boxes. The question I have is, do you believe that over time that defenses will start saying, well, we're not going to bring the extra guy in because we don't respect your run game, and we're going to take away your explosive passing, and that might open up the run game? I'm kind of curious how you think that'll play out.
I think teams should start to try it. And I actually think this week is an interesting test because Houston doesn't want to put another linebacker on the field against anybody. Like they just run a lot of nickel. And I think the teams that you'll start to see potentially have some success against Seattle in this way is the teams that play with bigger nickels who are designed to defend the run. And that's what Jalen Petrie is. He used to play safety. He's a guy who is like plays like a linebacker. He wants to hit tight ends and stuff like that. And so I think teams like that can kind of live in the best of both worlds, where you have enough oomph in the box to really make tackles and do what you need to in run defense. But also Jalen Petrie can theoretically go and cover an AJ Barner or an Elijah Arroyo. And so I think those teams could give them issues. But I think with as well as their play action game, like most teams should probably consider just trying to live in more nickel and being like, listen, they might get more 6-yard runs than we would like, but if we can at least stop them from getting these chunk gains that they're getting, I think that could help a little bit.
When there's a team running play action, like a lot of teams run play action, even Ryan Grubb, not often, but he'd run some play action, but it wasn't really married to the run game. Exactly. And so you'd see play action off of formations or off of tendencies where they wouldn't run the ball ever. And so linebackers were literally, they wouldn't take a step. They would just wait for the play fake, and then they'd cover their guy. Now that is married well with what Klint, Kubiak, and John Benton are doing, what's the kind of recipe for defenses to start? Like, what do they key on to be able to really know if it's going to be a run or a pass?
I think that's kind of the difficulty. And I think actually part of why Seattle's defense being as good as it is, like, I think teams can struggle to stay in their play action mode when they're chasing in games. And like, but Seattle just hasn't been chasing in games very much. And so I think teams are kind of just living in the idea of like, okay, we're either at even script or the Seahawks are ahead in the game. They really might just run the ball here. I mean, you even saw the big AJ Barner explosive at the end of last game where they have a lead. They should be running out the clock, and they're just like, no, we're going to hit the dagger and kind of go win this one. It's things like that that I think have allowed them to stay in it. And so I also just think that by virtue of them playing with the heavier bodies, that kind of makes guys want to come up and hit. Because I think if you're playing in 12 or playing in 21, especially with as well as their fullback had been playing, if you're a step late to getting to that, that's how you get those 7-yard runs pretty consistently. And I think teams get more worried about that because if you're giving up the 7-yard runs consistently, then the other team is always in 2nd and 3 and the whole playbook's open. They can do whatever they want. Whereas I think sometimes defenses are like, you know what? We can live with a 20-yard chunk. It resets the down and distance. Now we can try to like get back to a clean slate, see if we can get a negative play and put them in 2nd and 12. So I think that's kind of why teams like to live like this.
I remember, I think I was talking to Robert when he was visiting during training camp, and he was like, yeah, Klint Kubiak's kind of like 2017 Kyle Shanahan, like kind of throwback of what he runs. And I'm curious for you now, is that the case? Is it still kind of throwback stuff? Do you see any new twists? Do you see anything that like, is this something we've seen a million times before? Are there anything new that you're noticing with it?
I think it's pretty stock standard. I think the only difference I would probably say is a little bit different is not that Kyle Shanahan didn't do tight formation stuff then. He certainly did. But I do feel like the Seahawks are even more condensed than Kyle maybe was at the time. And I think that's kind of just that the way that the league has been moving with I think, as many Sean McVay guys as we've gotten in the league, because he was really the first in my mind who was like, everything is going to be condensed. Every receiver is a slot receiver, basically. But we've also just gotten more of those guys from a personnel standpoint in the league, right? Like, I mean, think about who the Seahawks themselves have at wide receiver. It's JSN and Cooper Kupp, who I think are best when they can align somewhere inside the numbers. And we've obviously seen this year JSN doesn't need that. He's still really good when he can align outside as well. But I think those guys align when they can get a little bit tighter to the formation and use their ability to kind of maneuver through traffic. I think that's where you see that. So I would say it feels like a slightly more condensed version of maybe the old Shanahan offense, but I think that's probably where I would land.
Part of the reason I was curious was because we've also seen that offense be highly productive. Like the Shanahan offense has been highly productive. It also has struggled in big moments. It's struggled when it's behind. It's not necessarily built for coming from behind. Do you think that that's, going to be something to watch and monitor for the Seahawks?
Yes, but this is, I'm going to like go a couple of different ways here. I think part of the reason that has been true for a long time of the Shanahan offense, especially earlier on, the quarterbacks just weren't good enough. Like, and so when they were forced into scenarios where they had to pass, when it was like Jimmy Garoppolo or whoever, it's like, yeah, he just wasn't really cut out to do that. And so I think that can be part of your struggle. Whereas I think even in like the best, like 2016 Matt Ryan years, it's like when they were behind, he's a guy who can throw you back into the game. So it was fine. And obviously like Matthew Stafford with Sean McVay, these are kind of related offenses. He can throw you back into a game. So I think that part is kind of quarterback related. As it pertains to Sam Darnold, that's actually a really interesting thing to bring up because on True Media, there's a stat that you can look up provided by PFF that is like probability of dropback based on down and distance, personnel, all that sort of stuff. And on throws, under 70% probability, which is like, are we going to run? Are we going to pass? Defense is kind of guessing. Sam Darnold's the best quarterback in the league. 0.56 EPA. He is like MVP, oh my God, numbers. When he is above a 70% probability of dropback. So on these, pure pass downs, he's 19th out of 37 qualifying quarterbacks. So not bad by any means, but he becomes like a stoppable quarterback in a way that he's just not in these other splits. And so I do think that is part of it. And I think part of it is these offenses typically don't have the most sophisticated drop back game compared to other teams. But I also do think Sam Darnold has enough playmaking outside of the pocket and arm talent in a way that a lot of other quarterbacks in the system typically haven't. So I think he can still be prone to shooting himself in the foot every now and then, but I do think he's like talented enough as a playmaker to kind of work around it at times.
Now, remind me, you did like you have a quarterback tiers kind of thing you do during the offseason. Am I right on the Athletic? And like where it's not like,
I don't remember if we did this offseason, but we usually do. Yes.
I think you do. And you have like, there's like the fives that have, I'm going to butcher it because I don't remember exactly, but it isn't necessarily the best quarterbacks, but it's
the honorability. Yes.
Honorability index.
Yes. Where it's like, they just play a certain way where it's like, I don't know if this is always the best thing, but they're making the hardest throws. They're standing in the pocket. They want to make plays. They want to throw down the field. And I think what you're about to get at is I put Sam Darnold in the first tier because he's like, he just does stuff, man. Like, he might throw to a linebacker every now and then, but he's trying to make plays that win you the game. And that is a kind of quarterback that I'm always going to respect.
So that is what I was remembering, the honorability index. And I'm curious, now that you've seen him this year and he has the lowest turnover worthy play rate, which might be the most wild, maybe the most meaningful number that he's put up, and he's put up some pretty meaningful numbers this year. Why is that? What are you seeing from him? Do you see a change in him as a quarterback this year?
I think maybe a little bit. I think part of that is last year he just wasn't as accurate as he is right now. Like the accuracy is insane. And I don't know if that's something about the way that Kubiak is telling him the timing of this is supposed to work, if he trusts JSN even more than he did Justin Jefferson, whatever it is, I don't know, but he's just putting the ball on guys in a way that he didn't before. Whereas I felt like last year, he got away with not throwing as many interceptions. Like he could have thrown a lot more interceptions last year that he got away with, but this year he's just really not putting the ball in harm's way that way. And I think part of it is the accuracy, but I also do think that because they are pretty consistently ahead in the game script, he just, I think, has calmed down a little bit, realizing like, I don't have to make the hardest play on the field at times. I'm still going to make 4 of those throws a game, but I don't always have to do that. And I think last year when it was his first time like recapturing a starting job after going a couple of years without it, I think he was, even though he played well and within himself, still had a couple of those, like, you could feel him get a little bit antsy and want to make the play. I do feel like for whatever reason, he's calmed down a smidgen in Seattle so far.
Yeah, I didn't get anywhere asking Mike Macdonald this question, but I'm going to try with you, Derek. Do you think that one of the things that separates like the truly great quarterbacks from the good or the average quarterbacks are the throws they choose not to make, the plays they choose to dirt, to throw away, to just live for another play? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of like game management merchants out there that are just doing that all the time. But I'm curious when we're talking about with Sam Darnold, feels like the plays he's choosing not to make are pretty meaningful.
So that's actually a great point, because even when we did the honorability index show, right, like I made the point that it wasn't about quality, and the guys that were in the number 1 tier, I think it was like Sam Darnold, I think I put Geno in there, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford. Those are guys where I was like, they're very good quarterbacks, but because they play this way, might go a little bit too far. And to your point, like make throws that they maybe shouldn't. Whereas to me, the second tier of guys were aggressive, like right on the line where you needed to be. Those to me were like, it was like the CJ Stroud can be this way, like that when he's playing at his best, obviously, like that to me is what it's supposed to look like. Like Josh Allen, I think for the most part in his career has been this sort of guy. Lamar Jackson to me is this sort of guy. Like that to me is what it's supposed to look like. And so I do think Sam Darnold has calmed down a little bit and gotten to that where I think he's done a better job of not feeling like he has to always press and make some insane plays. And maybe that regresses. You know, it's only been 6 weeks and they've been ahead in a lot of these games. But we obviously saw at the end of last year where he was doing a little bit better at that. And then the last 2 weeks obviously just completely implodes. And so I do think that he's learned from that a little bit, though, like going through that experience, getting a new shot here. I think it's helped him a little bit. And I would like to see it sustained because this version of Sam Darnold is incredibly fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think, you know, without diving into the Geno Smith stuff, the throws he's choosing to make is an issue like this. It was an issue last year. It's an issue this year. And so that's one of the things that was in my head is it just feels like there's some choices going on that are maybe helping Sam in this regard. But let's flip sides to the other side. We're talking to Derrik Klassen of the Athletic Football Show. And we started by talking on the offense about stacked boxes. I want to start by talking on the defense on light boxes. The Seahawks are one of the only teams in the NFL that is playing, a very low percentage of stacked boxes. They're one of the highest light box percentage teams. Of the teams that are, the Seahawks are the only one of the top 5 that are allowing less than 4 yards per carry. So they're actually allowing 3.3 yards per carry. They're allowing, I think, a negative 0.2 EPA per rush. So that, and then the other piece is they don't blitz, but they're one of the top pressure teams. So these two kind of in conflict aspects that are allowing Mike Macdonald to keep a lot of guys in coverage and still get a pass rush and still stop the run. What are you seeing from that defense?
Which one do I want to start with? I'll start with the run defense. I think I think they do a really good job of finding answers in the run game by like firing guys late into the A gap so that they can create like a little Build-A-Bear front where you end up kind of creating a bear front later in the down instead of coming out that way with your defense.
I've never heard that. I love that.
I think I heard that on a Chris Vass thing one time where it's like, yeah, because the bear front for people who don't know is like you have 3 tech, nose, 3 tech right next to each other, and you kind of create this front there. But if you just blitz one guy late into one of those gaps, it's like you kind of create it post snap. And so they do a good job of stuff like that. But I also think just personnel wise, they're incredible. Like Leonard Williams to me is, I don't know how many defensive players are playing better than him right now. Like he is incredible, both run and pass. And so I think the pop that you get from him in the run game has been helpful. Byron Murphy, I think, has been solid. And then to me, the defensive ends, especially when they're healthy, I know they've been a little bit banged up recently, but like Derek Hall, I think, is awesome in run defense. DeMarcus Lawrence is really, really good in run defense. And so I think getting a little bit bigger on that side of the ball on the edge has helped them a lot. Obviously, Ernest Jones at linebacker is just kind of a fixer. And so I think he's been good there. And so that's why I think they can get away with being a little bit lighter in the box there. The pass rush stuff is just like, they just find so many ways. I'm doing a video. I do a video series every week now for The Athletic where it's just kind of like a little scheme thing of like, how did this happen? And I actually picked the Seahawks-Jags game this week because they pressured the hell out of Trevor Lawrence, but they only blitzed on 12% of their plays. And a lot of what they were doing was they would put 3 guys to one side of the center, run the nose tackle straight across the center's face so he's out of the way, and then just run a pick between the guard and the tackle. And the Jaguars were just like, could not figure it out. And they just, it seems like every week Mike Macdonald figures out like the one thing that this offensive line cannot pick up and cannot handle, and just does a really good job of abusing it. And so sometimes it's those, just those 2-man games. Sometimes it's overloading, like, bringing Emmanwori into the box and making him look like a blitzer. Like it just feels like they have more tools in the box than other teams do. It's really fascinating to watch.
Yeah, we talked about that when you were on last time about the Seahawks defense seemed to be the forgotten unit in the NFC West while everyone was talking about the 49ers and them making a resurgence and the Rams and even the Cardinals, I think. One of the interesting puzzle pieces or weapons, depending on how you want to think about it, is Nick Emmanwori. And it really was his first full game last week. He'd played the week before, but this was kind of, I think, his first full run. And they have not yet played a game where Devin Witherspoon and Nick Emmanwori were on the field at the same time. And everything I know about how that defense has been assembled, the 2 of them on the field is a big unlock for Mike Macdonald. And I luckily, Devin Witherspoon's out in the practice field today, and so is Julian Love, and so is Tariq Woolen. When they get those guys back, what's your expectation? People talking about Nick Emmanwori and Kyle Hamilton. I feel like that's a little bit, that's unfair to the young man. But what can a player like Nick Emmanwori allow Mike Macdonald to do?
I honestly, I'm very curious to see what they do with him, because they're kind of in a weird spot now where, in my mind, the best spot for Devin Witherspoon is in the nickel. But I think they've obviously built a defense now with Emmanwori in mind that they're probably going to use Emmanwori as more of like a big body type nickel, more of a car crash player, the way that we were kind of talking a little bit earlier, like Jalen Petrie. Obviously, Petrie's a smaller player, but a guy who you think can be very physical, close to the line of scrimmage. You can blitz him and certain stuff like that. And obviously, even in past iterations of this defense, they've been very happy to blitz Devin Witherspoon. And so when he was in the nickel, and so I would guess that they'll probably want to. There will probably be some stuff where when they have Job healthy, Woolen healthy, and Spoon healthy, maybe Spoon will play some nickel and you'll put Emmanwori at safety. But I personally worry about Emmanwori at safety because I think what he does best is he's a big player. And I think if you just fire him on some of these blitzes or you just kind of like simplify his job a little bit, he can go and he can chase. I think when you play him as more of a top-down player and you ask him to take proper angles, you ask him to read a lot more stuff out in front of him, I think that's going to be something that's going to take a little bit more time. So I would still, even if everybody's healthy, probably try to use Emmanwori as more of like maybe even like a big nickel linebacker, like take the other backer off the field and put him in the box, like that sort of thing, rather than having him at safety.
Yeah, I think that's for sure. I don't think we're going to see Emmanwori deep at any point this year unless there's some really serious injury issues. So a couple more questions for you, Derrik. As we kind of think about the NFC in general, where do the Seahawks fit in this overall picture? You know, there's some teams that feel like maybe they were supposed to be great, Philadelphia being one of them, that maybe aren't quite as great as people thought. San Francisco's got all these injuries. Where does Seattle fit in that picture for you?
I would say right now the only NFC team I am positive is better than them is Detroit. And that's just, you know, a lot of that is earned equity too. Like Dan Campbell's just been doing this for so long. Jared Goff's been really good for a long time. And so I think the earned equity there, like I would probably still stay Detroit. But other than that, you can kind of start to at least sell me on the Seahawks, even if I might pick other teams. Like I still kind of believe in the best version of the Packers. I think they might still be a better team, but like, I know the Seahawks literally lost to the Bucks, but like I think they might be a more complete team than the Bucks are. The Niners, I think, are just too banged up to be like a meaningful team down the stretch. And then I guess I would still probably say the Rams are a better team, even though their lows are a lot more frustrating to watch. But I still just, when I look at a team that has Matthew Stafford with those two receivers and the way their defense is playing, I still trust them by the end of the year. So I guess in a roundabout way, this probably puts Seattle at, like, if I really had to rank it, maybe like the fourth best team in the NFC, third or fourth, something like that, probably.
Yeah, and the Rams, I want to talk to you about the Texans game with the Seahawks in a second, but the Rams, curious your thoughts there. I know you and Robert have followed that team really closely, and I don't know what to make of the Rams. I look at that pass rush, and I'm like, man, it is ferocious. Some questions about their coverage after they lost Keller Witherspoon. And then they've gotten some great linebacker play, which is not always what they've got. But the offensive line, to me, I know they've had some injuries, but right tackle, Havenstein has not been good when he's been in there. I worry a little bit about what's going on there. And then Devontae Adams has not quite been, it looked like he was going to be exactly what they thought, and then hasn't been. So what's your kind of read on the Rams?
I still think that they're pretty good. I do share the same concerns about the offensive line a little bit. And I think the construction of the run game is going to lead to them being efficient kind of no matter what, because they're a very heavy duo team and they'll branch out and do some other stuff, but like that's a kind of base efficient, like let's just get on base type of run, and they do a decent job of that. And so I think the run game will always be okay. The pass protection, I do think you're going to have games where particularly the right side of that offensive line just kind of gets beat up a little bit. You know, I think their left tackle also has been a little bit of an issue this year. I think when they've been healthy, the interior's been good, but again, they've not been healthy. They've had a backup left guard for a lot of this year. Like, I think the offensive line influx stuff does give me like, that's why I think their lows are probably lower than Seattle. Like when they have a bad game and get beat up on the offensive line, Stafford can stand in there and make some throws, but if that happens 15 times a game, you're kind of just leaning into the variance and he's probably going to do something bad at a certain point. And so I just think so long as they can kind of avoid those or their defense helps them stay ahead in games, I still think that they're a very good team. And so I worry a little bit about the coverage. I worry a little bit about the offensive line, but to me, the best players and parts of this team are still too good. And I'm also, the thing I'll say about Devontae Adams, I think between the 20s, he's been exactly what they want. He's been really good at some one-on-ones. He's been finding spots over the middle. Him and the Stafford connection has been really good. They just wanted him to be a red zone easy answer, like just we don't have to think about scoring here, and he's not been that yet. I'll at least give them until like Thanksgiving when the games really start to matter for me to be too concerned about that.
Yeah. I think when I look at the Rams, I see the high ceiling that you're talking about for sure. It feels like the access to the floor or the basement for them is more pronounced than I would have expected. Mainly because of that pass protection. I'm just not sure how that's going to look. And part of the reason I'm bringing the Rams up, Derek, is because the Seahawks play the Texans. And when I look at the Texans, I'm like, all right, elite edge rush, good pass rush in general, a gap scheme run team that runs gap about the same amount as the Rams, an elite outside receiver, Nico Collins, a good quarterback. And guess what? They're also the best defense against play action in the NFL. So this week feels like, when I look at it, the toughest matchup the Seahawks offense is going to face maybe the whole year. How do you see this game with the Texans? And I also kind of see it as a dress rehearsal for when they play the Rams in, a month or so.
I think that's a really interesting point. And I would say the one difference that I think will be fun to compare and contrast between these two games is, even though the edge rushers are very good for both sides, in my mind, the Rams guys are a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a little bit longer. The Texans guys aren't weak necessarily, but they are like speed, finesse. Like, we're just going to really win with like that sort of style. And so they just fly off the ball. I do think against the Seahawks, that's probably going to give their guys some issues. Like, I think their tackles have been okay, but in my mind, when you can just be a little bit quicker, a little bit more explosive than those guys, teams have given them issues. And then so I would also say the one area I think you can get after the Texans defense is the interior of their front. But I'm not sure I'm all the way there yet with the Seahawks being able to expose that. And so that's how maybe you still get into these 2nd and 9s and stuff like that. This pass rush can tee off. And then I will say too, you mentioned they're a really good play action team defense. I also think for the Seahawks, this is like, JSN has obviously been incredible, but Stingley is kind of like the exact corner that in theory should be able to at least quell that a little bit, where he's a little bit quicker, a little bit lighter, really fast, very smart. It just feels like if he can take away one or two plays that JSN has been getting every week and really force everybody else to eat, that's how I think this game can start to potentially fall away for them.
Yeah, I mean, the Stingley and Lassiter on the outside, one of the other things the Seahawks have been doing is some max protect and 2-man routes, and they've been able to win on it because of either play action and still on the run, or just because JSN has been nuclear this year. That's hard living against those two corners. So yeah, it feels like, I mean, there's some Seahawks fans who are like, oh, we're going to roll over the Texans. And I'm like, I don't know what you guys are looking at, because this is a really challenging matchup. I mean, I think the first team to 17 points probably wins this game.
It's funny you say that. As we were just finishing up this thought, I was like, the last Seahawks game just ended 20-12. If this game ended something similar, I don't think I would be surprised at all.
Yeah, this could easily be a 13-10 kind of game that everyone on Monday night will be like, oh God, we stayed up on the East Coast till 1 a.m. for this. Come on. All right. Well, Derek, I don't want to take all of your time. This has been amazing. What's coming up for you on The Athletic?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, happy to be back. It's always good to do the preseason show and then come and check in mid-season and see how things are going. So I appreciate you having me back. Obviously, you guys can always find me on the Athletic Football Show podcast feed. I'm on there for 3 episodes a week, but Dave always does Building the Beast, and then Robert always kind of has a little bit of a grab bag episode somewhere in the middle of the week that he does as well. I also now have a YouTube series every week where it's, I kind of mentioned it earlier. It's a how did this happen sort of thing. And for Seahawks fans, that's great, because this week's video will be about the Seahawks. I think that'll be coming out on Saturday. So that's what you guys can look forward to from me.
All right. Well, Derek, hopefully we will talk to you again. Thank you so much for coming on. Have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you. You too.
All right. That was Derrik Klassen of the Athletic Football Show. One of the best out there, humble, smart, spends his time paying attention. And I respect people that, admit when they learn something new and were wrong about something before, because I certainly am in that category all the time. And Derrik is one of those guys as well. So great stuff from Derrik there. Also, if you haven't already, patreon.com/hawkblogger. I just posted some locker room interviews I did with Drake Thomas, the Seahawks linebacker, who's now the starting linebacker next to Ernest Jones, as well as Byron Murphy. Really fun conversation with Byron Murphy about settling in as a father and, all the attention he's getting for his season that he's having and how to keep grounded through that whole experience and stay hungry. So patreon.com/hawkblogger. You can also get it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those places. If you want the ad-free version, I get some people on these locker room things that are only like 7 to 10 minutes. They're like, there's so many ads. And I'm like, I don't control how many ads go in. But if you want no ads, go to patreon.com/hawkblogger, and that will get you access with no ads. And plus, you'll help support the show, and you'll get access to the Discord server where we have all sorts of people hanging out. You should do it. Patreon.com/hawkblogger. Also, if you have not already, make sure you take advantage of the SimplySeattle.com deal. Even though the Mariners lost last night, this is the time to double down on your Mariners gear, your Seahawks gear, whatever Seattle sports gear you want. Use code HawkBlogger15 for 15% off. I don't know how long this deal will last. I don't think they need to give any percent off given how awesome their gear is. So go there, use code HawkBlogger15, get 15% off. Go to jkboots.com/hawkblogger, get your best boots you'll ever own. Washington-based company over there in Spokane, family-owned, fantastic craftsmanship on these boots. jkboots.com/hawkblogger will get you a great deal on JK Boots. Great gift idea, by the way. Like, you will make someone's year if you get them some JK Boots for the holidays. So think about it. Take advantage of this deal while it lasts. And then go to Sleeper, download the Sleeper app, a great app to keep track of all the things fantasy sports, visualization of stats, hang out with your buddies, talk in the real-time chat. All that stuff is there. And right now they're doing a special deal where you can get $20 without even making a deposit. So you can go over there and get $20 for that. Plus, use promo code HAWKS and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, so I saw there's a couple super chats. Let me get to those. Corey Coleman says, how do you feel about a Will Macdonald IV trade? Well, if you know anything about me, Corey, you know I'd be over the moon about a Will Macdonald trade. I was very high on Will Macdonald going into the draft a few years ago. He went even higher than I would have expected, like middle of the first round. I think he went 16th, I want to say, to the Jets. And his first year wasn't that great. And so I was like, oh man, I might have really missed on that one. And then his second season, sophomore year, he came out and put up some big numbers, which was great to see. He is a classic speed bend kind of edge rusher. He's not going to give you a ton in run defense, and he's a little undersized. So I'm not sure he's the best scheme fit for what the Seahawks like from their edge players, but I really like Will Macdonald. I'd be super psyched if he was part of the Seahawks. Michigan Seahawker says K9 needs more snap with how he's playing. You know what? Let me see if I can pull this up for you guys while we're here. I just asked Mike Macdonald about this. First question, just fired it right away about this, and it looks like it is available. So let me pull this up. I will share Mike Macdonald's answer about why, like, basically what I asked Mike Macdonald was, hey, by every metric you look at, whether it's yards per play, whether it's points per drive, your offense is more effective when Kenneth Walker is on the field. Has he earned a higher percentage of the snaps? And this is what Coach Macdonald said.
As a result.
Yeah, I mean, we take like stats into account on how effective we are and who's out there, but we have a plan on how we want to use our guys, and both guys are playing high level football for us. Both guys have things we want to work on. We love both guys. Both guys are to keep playing for us.
So that was his answer, which amounts to don't expect anything to change. I don't get it. I don't. What would make sense to me is if Zach Charbonnet was your third down back, if Zach Charbonnet was your 2-minute drill, back. That makes some sense to me. Like situational, where the split of reps was like 60, 65 to, 40 to 35, kind of thing. Right now it's 50-50. And a lot of times Charbonnet is ending up with more carries than Kenneth Walker. And I think if you go back and I have not done this, but if you go back and you look at drives that Kenneth Walker was on the field versus drives where Zach Charbonnet was on the field, I mean, I feel like it's twice as likely that the Seahawks score when Kenneth Walker's on the field at this point. And it feels like a waving of the white flag when, like, you might as well bring up Michael Dixon. And I don't mean that as like big shade against Zach Charbonnet for whatever reason, whether it's that individual player or how they play with him or how he's fitting with the offense or the play calls that they feel comfortable calling with that guy in the field, whatever. It could be a million things. But the offense is just not nearly as functional with Zach Charbonnet. And I know Jeff Simmons on our show is kind of, his theory is that Charbonnet needs to be the featured back and be in the game for a long time to get a rhythm and like kind of wear down an opposing team. That could be it. There are backs that are like that. I don't really even care what the reason is. I care about effectiveness of the offense, and it just hasn't been when Zach Charbonnet is on the field. I see that somebody send the Discord link. Well, if you want to get on Discord, you got to be a patron. Patreon.com/hawkblogger. There is, when you get added to the Patreon, there are instructions for how to get access to the Discord server. And there's also, if you just search in the posts, look for instructions for the Discord server. There are instructions there for how you connect your Discord account with your Patreon account in the settings, and that will give you access. So, yeah. And then I see some folks asking about the Tony Pauline rumor that the Seahawks are going to trade Tariq Woolen for Devin Achane over in Miami. I think that's ridiculous. I'll say this, like, Tony Pauline's been wrong about a lot of things. Excuse me. I don't know that I take his reports that seriously at this point. It's been a while since I think he's been a true insider that gets scoops. It also just falls apart on its face. I don't see why the Seahawks would trade for a speed runner when they've got two running backs that they already are splitting reps with. And I don't think that they would trade Kenneth Walker in this situation. He is a absolutely better back than Devin Achane. Devin Achane's super fast, but Kenneth Walker can run inside and out in the way that I don't think Devin Achane can. And I mean, I like Achane. He's a home run threat, can be a very productive player. I think he fits in an outside zone team. So all that, fine. But I don't see it. And if you're going to trade Tariq Woolen to Miami, which could make plenty of sense, I think you're looking at getting a guy back like Jalen Phillips, maybe Bradley Chubb, maybe Jordan Brooks. Those are guys that would actually change the calculus for the defense. So yeah, I don't see it. And I also see the notes. Nugash has talked about that Kenneth Walker has the 7th best yards before contact, and Charbonnet's dead last. He gets way worse blocking and different runs. I'll tell you this, as someone who's like watched those plays, multiple times, that was true for sure in week 1, like 100% true in week 1 and in week 2, that week 1, if you remember, Charbonnet was getting more success and Kenneth Walker wasn't. Week 2, Kenneth Walker was getting more success and Charbonnet wasn't. And it did really feel like the runs they were calling were just not blocked up well for the guy that was not productive in each of those weeks. What I've seen the last 2 weeks, at least, is that part of the reason Kenneth Walker is getting more yards before contact is because he is making better reads. He is moving. He is avoiding tackles at a much better rate than Zach Charbonnet is. Zach Charbonnet is a little bit of a, plug and play running back. He reminds me, this is an insulting comparison, but he reminds me a little bit of the way I played basketball in high school. The coach drew up the play. I was in the right place, the right time. I ran it exactly as it was designed to be. But a lot of the best players would create within the structure or out of the structure of the play to create big opportunities for themselves and for the team. Kenneth Walker is much more likely to do that. Zach Charbonnet kind of runs it probably as it's designed to be run, and that's not always been the best way to be productive. And so I think Kenneth Walker's been much better this year about not freelancing to the point of really hurting the team, making like really bad cutback decisions on, like last year, he would cut back on counters. And if you remember, Ray Roberts was showing us how, like, you just literally as a running back, you can't do that because you're going against the leverage that your offensive line's creating in that situation. And it's almost never going to work. And it's also going to result in holding penalties and losses. So I just feel like Kenneth Walker is working better with this offense. And if you heard D'Amico Ryans talk about how the play action game's working for the Seahawks, he talks about Kenneth Walker, and the way his tone of voice is like, that is a damn good player. He is a really scary player. His speed, his tackle breaking and elusiveness scares defenders. I don't know that there's any defense right now that is like worried about Zach Charbonnet. And that doesn't mean Zach Charbonnet is not good. We've seen how good he can be last year in Arizona. He can be a very productive back. But even that little fear factor plays some amount of role in a linebacker's head and a safety's head to honor play action, to honor an outside zone run, and allows you to open up some things elsewhere. So I think there is something to this with Kenneth Walker being more effective in this. I would love to see them both just find their footing and be really productive and be a little bit more like the Atlanta Falcons, Bijan Robinson, Algier kind of combination where it doesn't matter who you run, you're going to get some productivity. That's not what it's been so far. Other news, let's talk injuries. You heard me talk about it a little bit earlier, but in case you missed it, we have not gotten the injury report yet. We're about 45 minutes from that. But Devin Witherspoon is practicing. Reek Woolen is practicing. Julian Love is practicing. So we did not get word on Derek Hall. We'll find out there. I'm not expecting Derek Hall to practice, but it'd be great if he was. And so that's a big deal. This was a padded practice today. These guys are in pads. They're going to be participating in a physical practice. That's a really good sign. And I think that's an absolute crucial part of this matchup with the Texans, because this is a Texans team that struggles against man, but eats up zone coverages. And you want to have some of your best cover players available to you for this game. And I also personally, I'm interested in hopefully they'll play him. Tariq Woolen matching up with Nico Collins, to me, is an interesting matchup from a size and speed perspective. So yeah, lots of stuff going on there. And then in just about an hour, I am going to be back here with all of you for Real Hawk Talk. Dana O'Gorman, Nathan Ernst are going to join me. We will go deeper into this Texans matchup. We will answer patron questions. If you're not already on the Discord and the patron channel in there, you can drop some questions in there for us. And then we'll make our picks for this game, and we'll get that all done ahead of the Mariners' first pitch, which will be happening at 5:30 tonight. So that will do it for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that conversation with Derrik Klassen. I certainly did. Big fan of Derrick's and appreciate him coming on. If you haven't given us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, takes only a second. Spotify, super, super appreciate it. It's very, very helpful. Just takes you a second to do and means a lot to me. And helps other people find this. And let's keep growing the community. And we're getting 10, 12, 15,000 people watching these shows. It's amazing. It's awesome. A lot of really, really great people. And I just want to keep growing this community and give us all a place to hang out together, talking about the Seahawks, talking about Seattle sports. All right. With that, that'll do it for this episode, an afternoon edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all. See you in an hour.